Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse is out now, and here's a full spoiler review. Is it better than the original Spider-Verse? Is it a visual masterpiece? And does it have a character talking about how the multiverse works, whilst another one is making light of the complicated plot? Full spoilers ahead, so if you want to go into the movie blind, then perhaps come back later.
Gwen? Wanna get out of here? Welcome to Spider Society.
So cards on the table, I didn't really understand why everyone loved Into the Spider-Verse when it came out in 2018. Yes, it had great visuals and a good soundtrack, but it was another multiverse film and another Spider-Man film. And it feels like we've had a Spider-Man film every year for the last 2 decades. And of course, there's that bias against animated films that I think most of us have, where it's viewed as a more childish and silly medium than live action. So if you're unsure on whether to watch the next Spider-Verse, then bear in mind that this glowing review is from someone who wasn't very excited to see the film, who shares all the preconceptions that one might have towards Across the Spider-Verse and all animated films. Now, having watched the movie and had a few hours to stew on it, I can safely say that Across the Spider-Verse is the best film I've seen in a long time. Now here's the cliff notes before getting into any major plot details. The animation is outstanding. It just pops off the screen so well. On numerous occasions, I was just stuck staring at Spider-Punk, or Gwen Stacy, or Cowboy Spider-Man, as each Spider variant is just so different and captivating. The scenery and art style express the emotions of the characters so well. When Gwen Stacy is building bridges with her father, and what happens to the background? Well, it turns glowing pink, portraying the happiness that she and her father feels. Then 2 seconds later, her spidey senses tingle, and out comes a visual representation for that, straight out of the comic books. Then we switch to a more noir style, when Miles is unhappy, and then the busy exploding visuals, when he's being chased by thousands of Spider-Men, all of which have a different art style. Across the Spider-Verse is a 2-hour masterclass of wonderful storytelling, utilising cutting-edge animation. It's just brilliant. The visual brilliance would be enough if the plot was a run-of-the-mill multiverse one. Now you may think the run-of-the-mill and multiverse plot is an oxymoron, but we've had so many bland and tedious multiverse films since Infinity War. However, Across the Spider-Verse has a solid plot and fantastically developed characters, truly making the film a must-watch on the big screen. Before covering the characters in more detail, here's a quick summary of the plot. We start off with Gwen Stacy, who after battling a Renaissance-era vulture, joins Miguel O'Hara, the leader of the Spider Society. This society keep the multiverse timeline in check, making sure that canon events are kept in place. As in universes where a canon event doesn't happen, such as Uncle Ben not dying or Gwen Stacy's dad surviving, that universe will collapse in on itself. Basically, it's a multiverse logic of Doctor Strange in a multiverse of madness. Gwen then meets up with Miles, who's been facing off against Spot, a villain that can portal himself to any place using the interdimensional spots that cover his body. Miles follows Gwen to Mumbattan, which is Indian Manhattan, if you hadn't guessed by the name. Miles stops a canon event by saving Indian Gwen Stacy's dad. This causes Mumbattan to fall apart until Miguel O'Hara and the Spider Society come to fix it. Miles then finds himself at odds with Miguel, as Miles himself is a non-canon event, due to the spider that bit Miles coming from an alternate universe. Miles also finds out that his father, who is soon to become police captain, will be killed by Spot in 2 days' time. Miles wants to stop Spot from killing his father, but Miguel and all the other Spider-Men, except from Spider-Punk, more on him later, tell Miles that he has to let his father die, as it's a canon event and could mess up his entire universe if he saves his father from death. Essentially, it's a classic conundrum: the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. Miles says he can do both, by saving his father and stopping his universe from collapsing in, and he flees the Spider Society, leading to one of the best chase sequences I've ever seen, involving a bucket load of spider people chasing Miles through the futuristic world where the Spider Society HQ is located. During his escape, Miles ends up in a universe where the spider that bit him originated from, a world where his father died and where the universe's prowler is Miles himself. Gwen Stacy gathers Peter B. Parker, Indian Spider-Man, and a gang from Into the Spider-Verse as they embark on a mission to help Miles. And we are left with the cliffhanger ending as Miles, Gwen's group, the Spider Society, led by Miguel, and Spot, who has been levelling up throughout the film, prepare for battle. This abrupt ending may frustrate many people, as it ends in a similar manner to Dune Part 1, where it doesn't have the typical beginning, middle and end structure, and leaves you wanting more. So that to me is the main criticism for the movie. It takes a little while to really get going, with a rather long first act. The middle act is phenomenal, and then we enter the final act for about 10 minutes, when the end credits roll. So it's not that easy to judge how good of a movie this really was, because I feel like I've only seen 60% of it. That being said, I cannot wait for Beyond the Spider-Verse, which is scheduled for March 2024, and is set to be the multiverse war to end all multiverse wars. Now looking at the Spider-Verse characters, what I love about them is that they are all variations of the same story, so we know their histories and can empathise with them straight away. We know that they all lost their version of Uncle Ben, and we know that they all have, or at least started, with good intentions, and is what makes the interactions between the various Spider people so intriguing. Spider-Punk, I think, will be many people's favourite new character, as the anti-totalitarian, guitar-wielding version of Spider-Man. Not only has he got a great animation, but he is full of great lines, which work beautifully as ironic, self-aware, punk rock statements. When he says fight the system and down with capitalism, we all know that all he wants to do is have a fight and stir things up. Miguel O'Hara, voiced by Oscar Isaac, is a really good villain, with a stoic and angry disposition setting him apart from all the other Spider-Man variants. O'Hara has more than a few similarities to Miles. Superficially, they both speak Spanish, and with Miguel revealing that he himself caused a Nexus event that destroyed a universe he visited, you can tell Miguel sees himself in Miles, and is projecting his regret for his past actions onto him. Miles and Gwen share the spotlight in equal measure, with Gwen central to the prologue. Then we follow Miles for the middle, and then in a later stage of the movie, the POV is split evenly between the pair. Miles has a really tough time in this film, and is a really rootable character. From finding out that Peter B. Parker and Gwen could have visited him any time, but they chose not to worrying that Spot will kill his father in a few days' time, and then having to single-handedly fight the Spider Society. You really feel for Miles as he tries to save the many and the few. Now this choice could come across as idealistic and naive, but it doesn't, because Miles embodies the selfless hero trying to save everyone he can, which is quintessential Spider-Man. Gwen also has a tough time, and the relationship between Gwen and her dad is wonderful, with them both trying to make things work, as Gwen wrestles with her secret identity as Spider-Woman, and being a teenage girl, whilst her dad deals with his life as a policeman and trying to relate to his teenage moody daughter. It's a great relationship. Also, the will they won't they romance between Miles and Gwen is solid. Apart from pregnant motorbike riding Spider-Woman, who is rather bland, I can't think of a character who I don't love. And now finally, time for the scores. I've given the plot an 8, entertainment value 9, characters and performances 9, visuals 10, and when we look at the soundtrack, it's just so distinctive, and composer Daniel Pemberton deserves a shout out for sure. The music flows beautifully throughout the film, from electro chill to hip hop to classical. Sound 9, and despite being abrupt, the ending does create anticipation for the final film in the Spider-Verse trilogy, so for that reason, ending scores 8. My overall rating for Across the Spider-Verse is 88%. And if you told me before I watched this movie that it would be my second highest rated film in the last 2 years, only behind Everything Everywhere All at Once, then I would have been shocked. I truly did not expect to like this film as much as I did, and seemingly, I'm not the only one. The Rotten Tomatoes critic score stands at 97%, and the audience score is 93%. The IMDb score is 9.1 out of 10. Into the Spider-Verse made $375 million at the box office in 2018, and I think that Across the Spider-Verse will make way more than that. And although it's competing against big names such as The Little Mermaid remake, Transformers and The Flash, coming later in June, I think the word of mouth for Spider-Verse will be incredible. Into the Spider-Verse was something new and different, so the movie-going audience at the time were perhaps unsure whether to see it. But now the Spider-Verse is an established sub-franchise, so I imagine we'll be seeing over $500 million at least for its box office. Now, what do you think? Have you had a chance to watch Across the Spider-Verse yet? And how would you rate the movie? Did you have the same preconceptions against the Spider-Verse that I did, or are you a massive fan since the original? Next week, I'll be reviewing the new Transformers, and a week after that will be The Flash. I'm also starting up a weekly podcast, This Week in Film. So if you enjoyed this video and any of that sounds good to you, then please consider subscribing to the channel. Thank you for watching, and see you again.